Hello, my name is John Span. I have been treasure hunting here in San Diego for the past 20 years. I am currently making this video from my hospital bed. 2 days ago, I had just come out of the IC unit at Grossmont Hospital with a lung infection. Before that, I was in a coma for 9 months. Before that, I arrived dead on arrival the week that the BLM Land Management Senior officer, who was their department for geology, who was going to approve the permits. I arrived dead on arrival on the doorsteps of Grossmont Hospital, 14 days in a coma. That was in 2015. So when this past time in the hospital, as soon as I get out, I'm making this video letting everybody know my intent. I'm going after some statues that Cortez wrote about, emerald green statues, worthy only of a king's eyes to see. Excuse me for communicating in this manner. I returned from the hospital and my dentures have been lost. This information is so important that it gets out, because if I die, it'll be gone for another 500 years. What I have found, artifacts, first-hand accounts recorded that have concluded me to, without any hesitation, Cortez was here before Cabrillo. I know that's a big statement, and there's not one professor, teacher, or anybody in history just has got it wrong in San Diego, which it has done many times. Let me prove it to you. The business aspect. I want to grant exclusivity to someone for 20% of my business. I believe the business will, within 2 to 3 years, easily have gone for $250 million, $250 million. I'm going after that I've seen that is waiting. That's not the ones that are in treasure vaults, treasure boxes. The big stuff Cabrillo had to leave here. Cortez wrote in his, when he got back to Spain, of such beautiful statues that only the kings of Spain was worthy to see them. He thought hiding him somewhere in the ship. He knew the shipmates, if they found it, would kill him. The ship and the carvings would never see the shorelines of Spain. He thought about insulting his men's intelligence by telling them it was a lesser of value of a turquoise statue. Well, he didn't either. He left them here, knowing that the king would come from behind to find him. Well, king never came because he had to tell stories of finding gemstones as big as a school bus. That's right, a school bus. I've got a digital camera. I photographed him. So, but he didn't. So he was labeled somebody that told outrageous stories. Stories that were so incredibly wrong or outrageous that could never, ever be possibly be true. That's his label that Cortez, after he should have been praised as a hero of what he did, the world had never seen, and nor will ever see again, of him taking down the Aztec nation with a few hundred men. Incredible. Getting the little guys together, using their superstition against them, but he did have steel, and that steel was a determinant factor also. But when he got back to Spain, he was looked upon as a liar. He brought back treasure. He brought back some people, indigenous natives, to learn their language. But in general, a basic liar. And he wasn't being believed of some of these artifacts. And he wrote them down. I put the emerald green statues on the internet back in 2005. A gentleman by the name of Rich Harris, he owns a pawn shop in Las Vegas and a TV show, contacted me and we started talking about an auction house that I'm going to be opening here in San Diego, because I have found so much treasure that I'd like to share it with the world. And having these, I believe, statues, I believe would be best suited at an Indian reservation or a museum. I'd like to keep them in San Diego because people, after hearing about something that Cortez wrote about, lost for 500 years, proving that he was in San Diego, people will want to see it and they'll come from everywhere. I've also found statues 6 inches tall of a person in a running position having a lance. Lance was about his height plus half in his right hand. About a foot in front of him are 3 Indians on the back of a horse. The one in the middle is small, I believe to be a child. There was a conquistador in front of holding onto the reins and leading him into a jail. The jail was a big igloo, basically. 20 people could fit in there, but it was made of bamboo, woven across. You had to crawl in, had to crawl out, on hands and knees. Ingenious way not to have the opening rushed and people escape. 4 Indians were being led away from the jail with a conquistador in front, and then about a foot above everybody else, there's a conquistador with his hands on his hips, looking over the entire scene, and his horse is directly behind him. I photographed these statues, but I want to retrieve them and set them on display where people can see these, along with Cortez's Cabrillo's logbook. He writes, women and children, when they were approaching San Diego, but at the time was San Miguel, that women and children started screaming. The women grabbed the children and started running away. The men lined the shores and launched every arrow that they had at it. When they had no arrows up, they picked the beaches clean of all the stones. They did not want him coming to shore. A good reason. They had thought Cortez had come back, and Cortez enslaved them and killed many Indians. They talked, Cabrillo wrote exactly what the Indians were describing to him. He says, this Indian is describing a man with a lance in his hand. And that can be verified by the statue. Now, and then he writes again, Cabrillo, this Indian's telling me he was on the back of a horse and rode it. Now, Cabrillo knew that horses didn't exist here. And it had been impossible for him, and I'm sure he said that to him. And he wrote, now the Indian has gotten up, he's making motions around the ship, and he keeps on repeating, I rode the horse. I rode the horse. Well, he did ride the horse. He was being led to a jail, as these statues indicate, but he was on the back of a horse. But that was, Cabrillo didn't know that Cortez was there before him. And the Indians couldn't say, hey, your buddy was here. They tried to say it, but just they didn't jive and get the communication down. There is so much more evidence. You'll just have to read my book. But I'm going to bring down some things off of these mountains that I'm going to be describing later on. Stay tuned for more, because I have a lot more. Now for the business aspect of it, by granting exclusivity, it's going to cost $1 million. I want you to keep that $1 million in your account. Still draw interest off it, or whatever you're doing with it. But as soon as our business, our mining company, has given $1 million dividends to me, $1 million dividends to you, at that time, the $1 million that's in the account can be released to me, and your debt for exclusivity will be paid in full. And that gives you 20% of all the treasures that I'm about to find and I've already found. So basically, your money's at no risk. You want it back, but I'm going to take 10% of that, and I'm going to start filing with the BLM Land Management. I'm going to start paying for people to have stones extracted. I'll tell you in the next video our first project, what I'm going after. That's right beside the road and very easy to go after. Stay tuned.